heading into picks and bans here. Flashpoint going to be the first selection. Seen a lot of this Ratatosker ban. Just no team wants to give up that early pressure that he brings.
Especially when you're against Sinosure from In Memory of Gabe. You don't really know what he's excelling at, so you might as well take away some global presence, and that's exactly what Flashpoint are doing. They're more comfortable with more of these unconventional gods. We'll see Incom play Zanami mid every now and then, some other different styles, which is why you see the Janus ban on top of the Ratatasker.
And Izanami is taken away by In Memory of Gabe. It's going to be Thoth in the middle lane for Incontinentia. Incon, his return back to the SPL, back in the middle lane. Flashpoint had some good confidence in him to give him this first pick.
Thoth is one of these gods in the mid lane that can be very safe or very aggressive, depending on your team's style. So Flashpoint are very dictating their picks around already Incon, picking up this Thoth early on, whereas on the flip side, Memory of Gabe going for this aggressive double assassin, Circuit and Thanatos.
Right away. I assume that'd be Thanatos in the solo lane, right? Totally.
More than likely.
Circuit probably not going to be handed over to Walrus there. Gabe going to be the selection for Shadow Q for Flashpoint, trying to get a little bit of protection against this double assassin that's going to do a lot of damage already in the draft for In Memory of Gabe. And Ullr, we've seen so much more of lately in Season 4. What is it about Season 4 that lets Ullr shine?
A lot of the strategies and openings from teams are dictating about the dual lane position. One team decides to invade solo, the other team decides to elect to invade the dual lane. So Ullr is one of these gods. If you get him a little bit ahead, he's going to start slowly poking out the enemy hunter, winning the one-on-ones, because a lot of the jungler's attention has been shifted to the right side of the map.
Well, that's going to be the pick for Xenotronics. You're going to have to see how he handles whatever Snoopy is going to be throwing at him. 2 jungler bans for In Memory of Gabe, trying to target out Mirage, Susano, one of Mirage's best gods, as well as Thor. And then 2 support bans away there. It's going to be Apollo for Snoopy. Has a little bit more late game potential than someone like Ullr, but definitely an opportunity for Xenotronics to find that poke you were talking about.
Absolutely, which is why I like to see Snoopy play this Apollo instead of playing the Vulcan that he's been playing a little bit earlier on. Going for a more standard opening strategy is going to be very safe, and which is going to allow him to sit in that 1v2 position, allowing Ionic to start rotating. And I like the fact that Flashpoint took away the Bacchus, because Memory of Gabe's composition is all about the burst and finding the kills. Without the Bacchus, it makes it more difficult for Ionic to synergize with that.
It's going to be Hercules support, so 4 physicals here for In Memory of Gabe, only relying on that magical damage from Whirlwind in the middle lane. Do you like this idea from In Memory of Gabe, Tolly?
Taking a page out of Frezzy's book, playing the Hercules support. We could even see a Sunder coming out of Ionic, and that's not a bad idea, trying to find the early kills. If you can find those early kills, you can start controlling the oracles, getting more vision around the side of the map, and that's when you can start leaning on that dual lane, getting Snoopy more involved as well.
Well, as we get into game here, Tolly, the thing I'm concerned about with this draft for In Memory of Gabe is who is protecting all these squishy assassins? They have very little frontline available to them, and of that frontline in Hercules, if his cooldowns are fairly long, and if you're using those to try and engage in a fight, he has no peel left for his backline.
That's why we see Mark of the Vanguard picked up by Walrus, trying to be a little bit more resilient in these team fights. Even though he has a lot of damage with his abilities, the base damage is good enough. You don't necessarily have to go for the sustain in the laning phase, going Death's Toll. You're just trying to outbox and outtrade Aquarius on this Raven.
Yeah, Aquarius on this Raven. We've seen a little bit more Raven in Season 4 than I think we expected. Shadow Q going to eat a lot of damage here, actually. Get down to about half HP, but immediately Walrus and Sinosure back up. You've got Aquarius on this Raven that does good damage in the early game with his first ability, as well as a pretty potent slow, and that's why you see Sinosure actually takes a little bit more damage than Shadow Q does.
And Walrus getting sustained back up. With that depth side, Snoopy's going to be left alone, uncontested, and that's going to favor him out with the Audacity. Xenotronics on the Ullr is going to be favored once he starts maxing out his first and third ability, but up until that point in time, Snoopy should be able to trade out with that passive.
The fact that Snoopy was able to find us so beautiful before Xenotronics was even in lane is going to be the reason that he's got pressure on this left-hand side early on. He does need to be a little bit careful with his mid and jungle on the right-hand side. You can see Xenotronics, he's got his mid and jungle in this left, but Xeno, he's only level 1, trying to box into Snoopy, and with that Audacity passive, it's going to be difficult to do so.
Ooh, Snoopy taking a very aggressive route, dashing into the wave, and that's what's allowing Xenotronics to find even more poke. He's going to lose the trade in terms of clearing the wave, but this is fine because the left side of the map was favoring a little bit of Flashpoint, because on the right-hand side, Memory of Gabe was invading the solo.
Well, you see Snoopy's gone for this Devourer's Gauntlet 1 start, the spiked gauntlet, instead of the boot start that we see go for Xenotronics. So he's got a little bit of extra lifesteal with those auto attacks as well. It's going to help him sustain up in that lane and not be quite as worried about that poke. Ionic, he's already got a red buff to his name, courtesy of that invade on the left-hand side. And now coming around the backside of Xenotronic. Xeno knows, but it's a little bit too late. Still takes the damage and the push, but meanwhile, on the right-hand side, Sinosure picks up first blood on the support in the solo lane.
We've seen a lot of supports being sitting in the solo lane recently. More importantly, we've seen some Sylvanas trying to alleviate a lot of pressure in that solo lane. But a Gabe this early on is not that tanky, especially when you decided to start off with the Shell Relic instead of Meditation and finding an early kill now for Sinosure on the Circuit could potentially snowball really heavily here. Not even level 5 yet, could look to even pressure the solo lane out harder.
I don't know. I don't think Flashpoint got a single one of their buffs yet, Totally. I mean, both buffs on the right-hand side stolen away by In Memory of Gabe. The red buff taken by Ionic. Now, finally, In Memory of Gabe are starting to do their own buffs on that right-hand side, but it's just so late. Aquarius, he's going to be in a lot of trouble on this right-hand side. The ultimate from Sinosure is good enough to secure the second blood. Sino 2-0 early on here, and that's the problem. If you give up all your buffs on that side, you're just going to be too far behind in levels.
Xenotronics, he doesn't have Purification beats available. Driving Strike is good. The jump, he's not in range to find the pull Ionic, but a good enough poke to allow Snoopy to still have an advantage here. Picking up his own red buff, not necessarily having the mana along with Xenotronics, but all he needs is this advantage in the health pool.
And Xeno gonna back, try and get some extra mobility to get away from Snoopy and Ionic if necessary. He's gonna go for the Ninja Tabi, which we usually don't see on Ullr. It's usually that Warrior Tabi because of how much extra damage it's providing to your abilities. Xeno trying to look a little bit more towards the late game with this purchase.
It could also be a timing issue where you decided to back with not enough gold to finish off Warrior Tabi, so you want to get back to the lane a little bit quicker. You pick up the Ninja Tabi as a result of not having that 50 gold. You also saving yourself a little bit of gold and experience, getting there in time to clean up that wave. And off of the back of that second kill from Sinosure also, this is what Memory of Gabe really need to do to start getting this early lead because of their double assassin pressure between jungle and solo.
I mean, look at the level disparities. Just now, Incon hits level 5. Zeus has been level 6 for quite some time. Sinosure 2 levels up. Ionic is doubling Shadowq's level in the support role. This is going to be difficult for Flashpoint to fight into In Memory of Gabe anytime soon.
Xenotronics wasting a lot of mana. Level 5, Ullr doesn't have that much damage in his abilities. On top of this, there's no Transcendence for him to have the mana pool or the MP5 to spam abilities.
Sinosure finds the taunt onto Mirage, gets a shield and jumps away, but Ionic just creating a zone, making sure that In Memory of Gabe can try and secure this speed buff, and it is secured despite the damage from Aquarius there. In Memory of Gabe steal away yet another buff from Flashpoint. Blue buff has respawned, but Flashpoint don't seem too interested in defending that one this time around.
Left-hand side, Snoopy's going to use the Purification Beats, trying to chase out Xenotronics. He doesn't have the mobility to chase out this Ullr. Snoopy has yet to back. He really wants to wait for that timing window to be able to finish off that Devil Gloves and then look for the stacks. And so far, Memory of Gabe successfully throughout this game has invaded 5 buffs, and they're looking for their 6th one on this red buff.
And I don't know if anyone can fight into this here. Incon charging that Final Judgment, may use it, just try to secure the buff, and he will, but it's not quite enough damage to do so. Whirlwind gets it anyways. The only positive right now for me, Totally, in terms of Flashpoint, is that Snoopy doesn't have that Purification for 2 minutes because of the aggressive plays out of Xenotronics. Mirage needs to find a kill for Flashpoint in those 2 minutes on the left-hand side to try and get at least one lane ahead for Flashpoint.
It's very difficult at this point for Flashpoint to get any sort of plays happen. All this aggression from Memory of Gabe on the right needs to be responded by Flashpoint doing something on the left-hand side. Oracles haven't really been going the way of Flashpoint either. They've been just kind of stagnant and letting things happen to them instead of being able to get anything back in return.
Ionic has gone for the Warrior Tabi himself. No Talaria, no Reinforced Greaves. Instead, going for the damage option in the early stages of the game. And with a lead like he has, I could absolutely understand why he would do that. Devourer's Gauntlet's also finished here for Snoopy. So the weakest part of the build that he's gone for is already done with. He's gotten that Devourer's Gauntlet spike.
Already adding more fuel to the fire, like you mentioned, with Ionic having the Warrior Tabi. This is why he went for this Warrior kind of support with that Bacchus band. And that's going to be a free gold Fury. Nobody here from Flashpoint at all. Not even 6 minutes into the game, borked with their first gold Fury of the game.
ShadowQ backed on a ward on that bottom left-hand side, and no one else was even close to try and contesting for that. Even if ShadowQ doesn't back, I don't know if he has any sort of steal potential there. Sinosure is still just living on this right-hand side, and look at how much damage Walrus is already doing with that Death Scythe, half-healthing Mirage, who just hasn't been unable to do anything this game because of the fact that he hasn't gotten a buff yet.
I mean, if you think about it, it was a soul laner and a jungler against a soul laner and a support to start things off. That's not going to favor out Flashpoint in any slight advantage. Being able to outclear the soul lane is also going to give them the opportunity to look for the invades, but finally Mirage looking for something.
Walrus doesn't have any purification, but he heals immediately off a minion and then goes up into hovering death. I think he thought about it a little bit there, deciding whether or not he should go back in, but that's just level 9, and that Mark of the Vanguard paying big dividends against an ultimate like Fear No Evil. That tick damage not nearly as relevant up against that item.
Ooh, Walrus electing to look for the depth scythe onto Aquarius instead of guaranteeing hitting a minion for the health sustain, but either way, surviving that gank was very crucial because that also alleviates a lot of pressure away from mid lane. Heroin is able to constantly rotate along with the rest of his team, and this kind of speed and blue buff invade is very easy for Memory of Gabe because of the fact of the threat of the Zeus ultimate.
And no Fear No Evil this time around, no threat of that for Mirage, which is going to make it even harder for Flashpoint to try and defend their buff. Incon going to take a decent amount of poke there in the middle lane earlier on, dashes away from the chain lightning this time around, but is now too far away to contest that speed buff. Ionic, meanwhile, just zoning Mirage away from his buff.
Doing so much damage with Driving Strike, the pull, also 3 or 4 in hands with the level 8 support Hercules only having Warrior Tabby as his offensive item. That's very scary considering it's only very early in the game, but mid lane, a lot of pressure.
Great shell from Shadowq, saves the life of his own life and that of Mirage, making sure that detonate doesn't finish off either of the two low health targets. Xenotronics going to get pushed underneath his own tier 2 tower, but again, it's just Ionic creating space for his team to secure these buffs. Flashpoint, I think, has only gotten their own purple buff.
That's correct.
So far
it's been 9 successful invades coming out of Memory of Gabe. Ooh, nice try from Ionic, cutting the distance with Driving Strike, trying to put himself in position for the pull, which could have potentially forced the purification. At this point in time, level 9 Hercules, level 2 Boulder, that does a lot of damage.
Absolutely, and you can see how much damage Snoopy's going to have as well. He's finished off his Warrior Tab by going for the power option instead of that attack speed, and he's got 42 stacks on that Devourer's Gauntlet as well, so he's going to be swinging pretty darn hard. Xenotronic still hasn't finished off his Transcendence quite yet, but once he does, he'll have a pretty decent power spike. Walrus has just been controlling this right-hand side the entire time because of the pressure brought to him by Cynosure.
Nice little mess by Snoopy, still trying to look for more poke, recognizing that with the rotation from Incon's forced into the defensive ultimate, but Cynosure is right around the corner.
They're looking at Incon now, just gets deleted by that Deathbane and the damage from Snoopy as well. Snoopy gets on the board, 3 kills. Cynosure has been a part of every single one.
And that's the problem with going Aegis over the purification beads for Incon. He recognizes he obviously needs to survive the boulder, needs to survive the ultimate from Cynosure as well, but not having the purification beads means the taunt from Cynosure is just going to be that much more productive.
Aquarius already uses ultimate a little bit earlier on, so he needs to back here just in case. If he eats a Death Scythe, he's going to be an execute threshold, and Walrus is going to try and find it. So he's going to lose. He could lose his tower here, though. Walrus could also just kind of stalemate this wave and make sure that that tower is there to take away gold from Aquarius for a little bit longer.
This is a scary point for Flashpoint. 30 seconds up until the Portal Demon and Fire Giant is about to spawn. We see the tier 1 tower on the right-hand side being taken by Walrus with his 3-level advantage. Already 10,000 experience on the side of Memory of Gabe. Not even 10 minutes into the game.
I mean, 5,500 gold at this stage is terrifying, but that 10,000 experience is even worse. Like you mentioned, there's the overhead kick, and Aquarius has to use his ultimate to get away. Still gonna need a Death Scythe for his troubles, just for coming back to lane, and immediately has to get pressured out by both Cynosure and Walrus, who have just dominated this right-hand side. Snoopy and Xenotronics boxing on the left. Xeno has finished that Transcendence, and you can see that big damage spike is definitely going in his favor. Meanwhile, on this right-hand side, Cynosure still looking for Aquarius. No ultimate for him. Last breath back into the team. Fear No Evil onto Ionic, who's taking a decent amount of damage, but the Zeus ult and the hovering death, too much for Flashpoint to handle. Walrus picks up number 4 for In Memory of Gabe.
Geb Shield didn't even matter from Shadowq. Getting executed was Aquarius, finding that 1 kill. The rest of Memory of Gabe, they're considering pushing down middle a little bit while still going for the Portal Demon. Snoopy didn't secure his own purple buff earlier on in that exchange because of that whole battle against Xenotronics with that Transcendence. That's the power spike, and the beautiful thing about Ullr, once that item is complete, that's when you start looking to just constantly trade and poke out the enemy.
Gold Fury started up here for Flashpoint, and they need something to go their way. It looks like this might be the thing that they need. Final Judgment going to be used just to secure it, just in case. Snoopy almost walked face first into it. That would have been a good way for Flashpoint to get on the board, but at least they get some gold back into their favor. Despite the Gold Fury, though, still 5,000 5,000 gold in the lead for In Memory of Gabe. 10,000 experience still there as well. And Ionic by himself is enough to zone 3 members off the last remaining back harpy.
Without Incon's ultimate, they don't really have the damage to take out this Hercules that's full health. Only level 10, but still a good enough threat. And because of the Portal Demon being taken from Memory of Gabe, there's a sound that's being made after that has been complete. Flashpoint are recognizing this sound and instantly seeing like, okay, they're all on the right side of the map. Golfier's exposed. We have a small timing window. We have the burst damage from Incon having that final judgment. Let's go ahead and get back onto the board, mitigating their deficit by only now 5,000 gold.
Flashpoint is still one of the newer teams here in the Pro League, and definitely a work in progress as far as North America goes. On the other hand, you've got In Memory of Gabe, who is one of the top cards in North America, despite going through the relegations process. So many veterans on this squad, as well as the addition of Sinosure from the console scene, who's looked phenomenal in his short time in the Pro League so far.
Flashpoint, new team, but not necessarily new players. Aquarius is the only one that's relatively new to the SPL scene. Everyone else from Flashpoint has been around the block, but the question is who synergizes a little bit better? In Memory of Gabe has developed a nice strategy of this constant invades to be able to amount this kind of lead.
And Tier 1 tower being sieged down here by In Memory of Gabe. No response from Flashpoint, appropriately so. No way to fight into that with your tower being that poked out. In Memory of Gabe gets 2 of the Tier 1 towers off the map by the 12-minute mark in the mid lane and the solo lane as well. The only lane that seems to be holding their own so far early on is Xenotronics on this left-hand side, and that's talking about his boxing capabilities. I'll hold that thought. Xeno gets blinked on. Sinosure, he's got the purification beads, but Xeno has blink. He's got no Aegis. He's dead.
He's gone. Nice rotation from Ionic, and like you mentioned before, this is the whole turning point for Flashpoint, is relying onto Xenotronics on this Uller. But Memory of Gabe, they're not gonna just let him get into the mid to late game for free because of all the invades on the right. That means they're gonna shift their attention to the left, and now Xenotronics taking a spill, being able to take the 3rd Tier 1 tower off the game so far. Memory of Gabe controlling the pace very convincingly, already 7,000 gold in the lead.
So talk to me about this blink Uller, Toli. What makes Xenotronics not want to pick up that Aegis and instead elect for the blink?
It's more of an offensive mindset, I think, for him. He wants to be able to surprise and okey-doke somebody around a corner that could be potentially isolated, especially if there's going to be a 4-on-4 on the right. His best bet for Xenotronics is to find the 1v1 on Snoopy. And what other bigger surprise than an Uller that's going to blink into your face, axe you, and then just ground and pound you with the rest of his axes.
I suppose so, but he certainly could have used that Aegis in that last gank. Great recognition from In Memory of Gabe, understanding that once that Circuit out hits, he's really got nowhere to go. You can see Shadow Q, he's got the Spectral Armor, good fear onto Walrus there, forced to use the Cataclysm because of the rotation from Ionic. Shadow Q might be juking himself to death in this scenario. Ionic gonna find the pluck back onto him immediately into the Deathbane, but a great Fear No Evil gonna create some space. Whirlwind drops the Lightning Storm and does a ton of damage. Not quite enough to finish anyone off quite yet, but look at how low the remainder of Flashpoint is. No sustain on their side means they're going to have a tough time defending any buffs or the tower on this right.
Mirage has only been able to do 1 offensive Fear No Evil so far this game, and as a result, it's going to be basically all of Memory of Gabe taking advantage without that cooldown from Flashpoint to be able to continue the pressure on the right to the Tier 2 tower.
Xenotronics, he's pushing left, but he's just going to have to watch from a distance as Aquarius falls yet again. Sinosure picks up his 3rd kill, 3-0-3 for the new jungler for In Memory of Gabe, looking very, very strong in his early SPL career.
And with all this pressure on the right, Xenotronics getting free farm on the left, getting the Tier 1 tower in the dual lane. Snoopy finally has responded to make this rotation, trying to make sure that the Tier 2 is not going to get pressured out. Xenotronics has to always be careful, though, because despite all that action on the right-hand side, Memory of Gabe are going to start shifting their attention to punish Xenotronics yet again. That purification means is going to come back up in about 5 seconds, though.
You see a lot of mobility for Memory of Gabe in this draft, Toli. You've got 2 blinks for Walrus and Sinosure respectively, and Sinosure is playing one of the most mobile gods in the game. You've got Snoopy with a global ultimate as well, so it really, Xenotronics is never safe on this left side.
Not at all, and he could also potentially use that blink just to be able to counter blink. As long as he doesn't get put into combat, there's a small window for potential escape. As long as he's not in position to get Circuit ultimate, then that's not the biggest problem in the world for him, the fact that he doesn't have Aegis, but he's going to be put to the test mechanically.
Absolutely. Portal Demon goes the way of a memory of Gabe, and Gold Fury started up. And now Flashpoint do have timer on this Gold Fury as they took the one earlier on, but no response in time. In memory of Gabe pushes their lead up to the 9,000 gold mark. Ionic caught alone in the middle lane, mitigate wounds, heals him up pretty nicely. Walrus in the sky looking to return some damage. This final judgment only gonna hit Snoopy. Mirage just gets dunked on by Walrus. He's gonna get picked up. Sino, he falls to Sidosure in the background, and now Incon pushed forward. There's the Aegis, but the Lightning Storm along with that detonate gonna be enough as Heroin picks up his oppositional mid laner. Aquarius in the wrong spot, buddy. You got no frontline capabilities at level 13. Only Shadow Q is there to watch as all Flashpoint falls to in memory of Gabe. 10-0 go the kills, 11,000 gold lead. And that's not quite enough for in memory of Gabe. They still want the Fire Giant.
They want more, neglecting the tier 2 tower and the middle Phoenix, instead going for the Fire Giant. They want to be able to have as much sustain, as much objective damage during every single respawn coming from Flashpoint. But look at this Shadow Q. He wants to potentially steal this, but he's not going to be able to avoid the taunt.
Just too much damage, too much zoning out of Sidosure. Now without
He's
rollout,
dead.
without Cataclysm, you called it, Tully. My man's is dead. Snoopy picks up his second kill. And in memory of Gabe, just controlling this game from the get-go.
Shadow Q tried so hard to potentially look for that steal. Cataclysm just to stop Sidosure from finding the initiation, but couldn't roll out far enough to be able to avoid those taunts. And now, memory of Gabe, they have the Fire Giant on all 5 members. 11,000 gold in the lead as well, and this is the point in time where it's going to be looking very devastating for Flashpoint. That experience gap is unlike I've ever seen before. 19,000,
and that's over 1,000 experience per minute in the lead for in memory of Gabe. Every minute that goes by, they gain a little bit more than 1,000 experience over top of in memory of Gabe. And just not a whole lot of answers overall. You can see the player damage. Zeus at the top, as you expect, but Sidosure with a single target assassin. He's not hitting that AoE like Zeus is, but they've been very, very effective at picking off lone targets, both in the jungle and in lane.
Gold and experience has just been so much in the favor of memory of Gabe. Usually, a lot of players will elect to solo farm, and normally you'll see a soul laner that's ahead that's about to hit level 20, whereas everyone's like around level 16 to 15. But at this point, everyone from memory of Gabe have been doing such a good job that they're all around the same pace. A lot of 17s, 18 on the side of Walrus. Memory of Gabe, they get the tier 2 tower on the left-hand side. They're starting to shift their attention in middle. Flashpoint are going to need to start doing something really crazy, and that's why Shadow Q has picked up this Frenzied Ritual, trying to do one last stand once the Phoenixes started getting sieged.
I don't mind this Frenzied Ritual whatsoever from Shadow Q. Like you mentioned, they need to do something crazy because this game is certainly not going their way at all. And if all it takes is one big final judgment courtesy of Frenzy as well, maybe they can turn it around and start to get back into this game, but certainly a tall task for Flashpoint to deal with. The good news for them is that a lot of the builds for In Memory of Gabe have gone a little bit more towards the offensive end because of how well this game has gone for them. You can see Walrus has no magical protection whatsoever out of that solo lane, but he is level 19. He's just got so much more base health than Incon can really handle, sitting only at level 12.
All Walrus has to do is just wait for Ionic to start applying a lot of pressure, especially with Sidosure blinking in as well. There's going to be a lot of kill opportunities for Walrus with that execute threshold. He can even look to engage directly onto Shadow Q the rest of Memory of Gabe. So the fact that he doesn't have magical defense, I'm not necessarily too worried about. The sustain from his death save is good enough. Like we mentioned before, Memory of Gabe's composition was just pure aggression. Find the kills, and since the beginning of the game, that's all they've been doing. Not even giving up a single kill in return.
11-0, 20 minutes in Memory of Gabe has a stranglehold on Flashpoint. Flashpoint gonna have to do some serious comeback in order to take game 1 here in our second set of week 2 of the North American SPL.
Already struggling Flashpoint throughout the entire split thus far, losing to Luminosity, losing to Eager, losing very convincingly to Memory of Gabe in this first game. They're going to need to start changing their mindset and strategy for game number 2, because you can't just let yourself get invaded 9 times in a row without a single response.
And that's something that we see from a lot of these teams that are trying to claw their way up from the bottom, is the fact that they are just getting aggressed on instead of being aggressive themselves. Aggressing onto the left-hand Phoenix is In Memory of Gabe. Cataclysm there onto Ionic, but the stun not going to find a home from Xenotronic. Sidosure blinks in and just erases Shadow Q, who does get his Frenzy Ritual off. Sino getting pretty low. Mirage jumps away and immediately eats a death sights from Walrus, who ends up picking up Xeno as well. Aquarius plucked back in 15-0. 16
That's
to
a
0.
DSI. That's going to be game. Great performance from Memory of Gabe in game number 1. Certainly worked very well with Yannick playing this Hercules support, something that he's normally known not to do. Normally he likes to play a lot of these utility supports to set up